I still remember the sound of her laugh that night. Light, controlled, almost rehearsed. It was a Sunday, the kind of evening that should have felt ordinary. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken filled my brother's dining room. Candles flickered against the glass windows, reflecting 4 smiling faces. Except one of them wasn't smiling for real. Mine. My name is Lena Carter, 34 years old, architect, the kind who builds for others but never seems to build much for herself. I'd been working 12-hour days that week, deadlines, clients, endless revisions, and all I wanted was a quiet dinner with family. My brother Evan had invited me over. Just a small get-together, he'd said. You, me, and Anna, his wife. The woman who somehow always looked like she belonged in a photograph. Her hair was tied neatly, her perfume subtle, her words always measured. She spoke way that, where even a compliment felt like a calculation. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a small box of chocolate truffles that evening. Something simple, thoughtful. I didn't know that by the end of that dinner, everything would start to unravel. Evan opened the door with that boyish grin of his. Lena! Finally, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. You look exhausted. Architect life, I replied, half smiling. What's your excuse? He laughed, gesturing me in. Married life. Anna appeared behind him, her smile practiced, polite. Lena, so glad you made it, she said, touching my arm lightly. You must be starving. Famished, I said. I meant it. But hunger wasn't the only thing simmering under my ribs. Something in Anna's tone, in the way she looked at me, felt different that night. I couldn't name it then. But I'd come to know it well later. We sat down at the table. Evan poured the wine, the chicken was carved, and for a while everything seemed normal. Talk about work. Evan's promotion. Anna's new interior design business, though I'd never seen her design a single room. Your place must be full of your own designs by now, Anna said, tilting her head at me as she buttered her bread. Not really, I replied. I live pretty simply. Oh, right, she said, smiling that soft, pitying smile. Still in that little apartment downtown? I nodded. She didn't mean little. She meant cheap. Evan shot me an apologetic look and I waved it off. I'd long learned not to take her barbs personally. But this time, I should have. Halfway through dinner, Anna refilled her glass and leaned back in her chair, perfectly composed. Then she said it, that line that would echo in my mind for months. Well, she said lightly, I hope you don't mind. We used your card for the flights. I blinked. My card? Evan froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Anna kept smiling. For the Maui trip. You know, the one we've been planning forever. I couldn't find my wallet when I booked it, and your card was saved on the site from when we booked that family cabin last summer. Remember? Her tone was casual. Too casual. Like she was talking about borrowing salt. I stared at her, unsure if I'd heard right. You used my card? I repeated slowly. She nodded. Just temporarily. We'll pay you back, of course. Evan finally spoke. Anna, I thought you said... I told you, honey, she interrupted, voice tight but still smiling. It was just easier. That word clanged in my head. How much? I asked. Anna glanced at Evan. The flights were, $3,000? My stomach dropped. $3,000. Anna, that's not a small charge. Oh, come on, she said, laughing softly. You make good money, Lena, and we're family. You know we'd never... I stood up. The chair legs scraped sharply against the floor. Evan looked panicked now. Lena, it's fine, I'll handle it. Will you? I asked. My voice was shaking, but not from fear, from disbelief. I could feel my pulse behind my eyes. I didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't even curse. I just looked at her, Anna, sitting there, perfectly calm, a faint, amused smile curling at the corner of her mouth. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't guilt. It was something else. Satisfaction. And in that moment, something in me shifted. The air between us thickened, heavy with the realization that this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't carelessness, it was a move. A deliberate one. I left the dinner early. Evan followed me out to the driveway, muttering apologies, hands stuffed into his pockets. She didn't mean anything by it, he said. You know how she gets. Yeah, I said. I know how she gets. I opened my car door, but he grabbed my arm gently. Lena, please, don't make this into a big thing. I'll transfer you the money tomorrow. I looked at him, my older brother, the one who used to walk me home from school. The one who'd once defended me when our father shouted about my wasted art degree. He'd always been my protector, until he married her. I don't care about the money, Evan, I said. I care that she thought she could do that. That you thought it was okay. His jaw tightened. I didn't know. Then why are you defending her? He had no answer. I got into my car, started the engine. The headlights cut across his face, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. The confusion, the weakness, the way Anna's shadow lingered over him like smoke. Good night, Evan, I said, and drove away. The night air was cold. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. I wasn't angry yet. Not really. Anger would come later. A slow, methodical kind of anger that doesn't shout. The kind that plans, but that night, I just felt hollow. When I reached home, I kicked off my heels, sat on the couch, and stared at the ceiling. The city outside my window hummed softly. People living their small lives, eating, laughing, sleeping. Unaware that somewhere above them, a woman sat quietly, realizing that the world she'd built around family was beginning to crack. And maybe it deserved to. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Transferred $3,000, hope we're good. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement, just closure as if money solved betrayal. I stared at the text. Then, at the bank notification confirming the transfer, I deleted it. Not because I didn't care about the money, but because deleting it felt like removing a stain. You can't buy peace. That week, something changed in how I moved through the world. At work, I smiled less, spoke less, but saw more. I started to notice patterns, people's tones, their power plays. Little manipulations wrapped in polite language. The way someone like Anna thrived on control, not through strength, but through small, invisible cuts. And I realized she'd been cutting for a while, comments about my single life, subtle digs about my career, her way of pulling Evan closer, little by little, until there was no space left for me. Maybe this wasn't about money at all. Maybe it never was. It was about dominance. About taking something from me, not just my money, but my dignity. That realization hurt more than the charge ever could. I spent the next few days in silence. No calls, no messages, until one afternoon my mother called. Lena, sweetheart, she said, voice warm but cautious. I heard there was some misunderstanding with your brother. Who told you that? Anna mentioned it. Said you were upset about something silly. Silly. I bit my lip, fighting the urge to say more. Just a misunderstanding, Mom, I said instead. Because what was the point? No one ever saw Anna the way I did. She was careful, polished. She knew how to play people, but I knew something she didn't. I'm patient. And patience can be lethal. That night, I lay awake, replaying every smile, every slight, every calculated word she'd ever spoken. I wasn't planning revenge yet. Not consciously, but something inside me had started to take shape, slow and deliberate. A design, not for a building this time, for something far more intricate. Because if there's one thing I understand better than most, it's structure. And Anna had just given me the foundation. They say every betrayal begins with trust, but that's not true. It begins with comfort. Comfort makes you stop paying attention. It makes you blind. And that night, over a table of roasted chicken and red wine, my comfort died. And something new, something sharper, took its place. I didn't know it yet, but Anna had just started a game, and I was about to learn how to win it. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always arrive as a blow. Sometimes it comes quietly, in moments so ordinary that you almost miss them. That week after the dinner, everything looked the same. Emails, commutes, the same bland coffee. But under the surface, something was off. It was like walking through a familiar house where the floorboards had started to creak, subtle, but warning you that something beneath was rotting. And in my case, the rot had a name. Anna. 3 days after the dinner, she called me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she wanted something. Lena! Hi, just checking in. Did you get the refund from Evan? I did, I said flatly. Oh, good. I told him it was such a silly mix-up. You know me, always juggling too many things. Too many schemes. You mean she kept talking about their upcoming trip, about the resort, about how generous I was for understanding. I didn't interrupt. I just let her fill the silence, her voice spilling through the phone like perfume that's too strong, the kind that clings even after you hang up. When the call ended, I stared at the wall. My coffee had gone cold. It wasn't the money. It was the audacity. The way she'd rewritten the story before my eyes, turning her theft into a silly mix-up. That's how people like Anna win. They rewrite, reframe, and if you stay quiet long enough, the lie becomes truth. At work, I found myself sketching late into the night. Not buildings. Faces. Shapes that resembled her. Sharp eyes, curved lips. Every line drawn with the pressure of something unsaid. My coworker, Maya, peeked over my desk one evening. You look possessed, she said, half joking. Everything okay? Just tired, I replied. From what? Designing skyscrapers or plotting something darker? I smiled faintly. If you only knew. She laughed and left, but her words lingered longer than I expected. Plotting something darker, maybe I was. Not out of malice, but because I'd started to realize I couldn't keep being the quiet one in my own story. That weekend, I visited my mother. Her house smelled like lemon polish and nostalgia, the kind of place that felt frozen in time. She poured tea, sat across from me and said, You know, Lena, Anna's really been trying. She told me she wants you two to get closer. Closer? I nearly laughed. Instead, I sipped my tea and said, She told you that? She did. She said you've been distant lately. And I understand, sweetheart. You've always been independent, but family's all we've got. Family. The word hit me like a bruise. I wanted to scream that family doesn't steal from you, doesn't manipulate your brother, doesn't wear kindness like a mask. But I didn't. Because in this family, truth wasn't welcomed. Only harmony. Even if it was fake, I left early citing a deadline. But as I drove away, something in me broke open. I couldn't just let it go. That night, I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and started going through my statements, line by line. At first, everything looked normal. Rent, groceries, utility bills. Then I saw it, a charge from 6 months ago. Lux Beauty House, $642.70, I frowned. I hadn't bought anything from there. I clicked further. Another one. Vivid Events Catering. 8 earned 80.50. Then one more. Tropicana Resort Holdings, 29.50. No. They were all in her city, all within days of family gatherings or parties Anna had organized, and they were all on my card. My chest tightened. My throat went dry. This wasn't the first time. She'd been doing it for months. The next morning, I went straight to the bank. The teller, a young man with kind eyes, looked uneasy as I explained. "I think someone's been using my card without permission," I said. He nodded, typing quickly. "We can investigate that for you, ma'am. Do you know who it might be?" I almost said her name. But something stopped me. If I reported her, she'd twist it. She'd tell Evan I was overreacting, paranoid, and he'd believe her. "No, not yet. I'm not sure," I said instead. "Just look into it." He promised to call once the report was filed. As I left the bank, I felt two things at once: fear and something that almost resembled calm. Because finally, I knew that evening Evan called, "Hey, Lena, you talked to Mom?" I did. "She said you seemed upset. Is everything okay?" He still didn't know. I took a breath. "Evan, has Anna ever used my card before? For anything?" He hesitated. "Why would you ask that?" "Just answer me. I mean, maybe once or twice for family stuff." "She said you gave permission." My stomach turned. "She told you that?" "Yeah, for Mom's birthday dinner last year. And that Christmas trip. I thought you knew." "I did not. She said you were okay with it," he added. "That's why I never asked." I swallowed hard. "Evan, she's been using it without my knowledge. Repeatedly." He went quiet. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear his breath catch. "That can't be right," he finally said. "Anna wouldn't—" "She did. Check your accounts if you don't believe me." "I'll talk to her." "Don't talk. Listen. For once, just listen." He didn't answer, and in that silence, I realized I'd already lost him. For the next few days, there was nothing. No calls. No messages. Until one night a knock at my door. When I opened it, there they were. Evan and Anna. She was holding a small bouquet of white roses. Her smile? "Polished as ever. Can we come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, barely. They sat on the couch while Eastwood Anna placed the flowers on the table. "Lena, we wanted to clear the air. There's clearly been some confusion." "Confusion?" I repeated, my voice thin. "Yes." She glanced at Evan, then back at me. "About the card charges. I went through our statements, and I think there might have been some old transactions that were accidentally linked to your account." "You know how online systems can be." "Oh, sure," I said. "The mysterious system just keeps charging my card." Her smile didn't waver. "I already told Evan we'd pay you back, and we will. But there's really no need to make this a big issue. We're family, after all." That word again? Family. Evan looked pale. He wasn't defending her this time, but he wasn't defending me either. I turned to him. "Do you believe this?" He rubbed his forehead. "Lena, I don't know what to believe," and there it was. The perfect fracture line. Anna had built it slowly, brick by brick, until he stood between us, confused, loyal to both, but trusting neither. That's when I realized something important. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was isolating me, and she was winning. When they left that night, she hugged me, quick, tight, performative. As she leaned close, she whispered something in my ear. "You really should keep better track of your accounts. Lena, people might think you're careless." Then she smiled, turned, and walked away. I stood frozen at the door long after they were gone. It wasn't just a threat. It was a message, a challenge. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about credit cards or family dinners anymore. It was about control. She wanted to humiliate me, to paint me as unstable, paranoid, and jealous, and she almost did. Almost, but she didn't know what she'd awakened. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and began tracing everything. Every email, every receipt, every payment record tied to that card. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Every transaction matched a date. Every date matched an event. The engagement party, Mom's birthday dinner, the anniversary trip, even the catered garden party Anna had bragged about on social media. Each one, a piece of the puzzle. Each one, a breadcrumb of her arrogance. I compiled it all into a folder. Labeled it Truth, because I knew one day I'd need to show it not in anger, but in precision. Revenge, after all, isn't rage. It's architecture. You have to design it. And I had just laid the foundation. She thought I'd let it go, that I'd stay quiet, keep the peace, protect the illusion. But that illusion had cracked, and through those cracks, something stronger was starting to grow. Me. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming something she'd taken long before the first dollar was spent. My dignity, and I was ready to get it back. Revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with clarity. Once the shock fades, the noise settles, and the heart stops racing. That's when your mind sharpens. Like glass under light, cold, precise. That's where I was. After Anna's little visit, after her whispered warning disguised as advice, I spent days in silence. Not mourning the betrayal anymore, but measuring it. Every memory became evidence. Every smirk, every word she'd ever said that made me second-guess myself. All of it fit into a pattern now. I was done being her quiet target. It was time to draw the lines. It started with a spreadsheet. Rows and columns of every charge I could trace back to her. Dates, times, descriptions, and even notes from my emails and calendar invites. I called it Blueprint A. Old habits die hard. I'm an architect after all. If I was going to build something, it had to be flawless. Blueprint A would be the foundation. But I needed more than numbers. I needed cracks, human cracks, in Anna's perfect image, and that meant I had to watch. I started small. On social media, Anna posted constantly. Perfect photos, perfect captions. The curated version of her life. One evening, I scrolled through her Instagram like an archaeologist brushing dust off ancient ruins. There she was, posing at a boutique with her besties. Caption: Retail therapy after a long week. I checked the timestamp. It matched the charge at Luxe Beauty House. Another post, a champagne brunch, her in white linen and sunglasses. Tagged location, the veranda. That day matched another charge. Each photo was proof. Each smile was a confession she didn't even know she'd made. I screenshotted everything. Organized it by date. Her vanity was building my case for me. Weeks passed. I didn't tell Evan. Didn't confront her again. Instead, I became invisible. When Mom invited us for family dinners, I showed up calm, composed. Anna greeted me with that same honeyed smile, the kind that hides teeth. But this time I smiled back, and every time she spoke, I took mental notes. The tone, the lies she told, the contradictions. People like Anna can't help themselves. They perform. And if you listen long enough, you'll hear the script slip. At one dinner, she mentioned her new client from her interior design business. Some wealthy entrepreneur she was redecorating a lake house for. Oh, he insists I handle everything personally, she said, swirling her wine. He's very private. Mom looked impressed. How exciting. What's his name? Anna hesitated. then said Daniel Cross. The name rang a faint bell. I knew that name. Later that night, I looked him up. Daniel Cross, CEO of Crossfield Developments. And there it was. His office? My firm's client, my next project. Fate has a dark sense of humor sometimes. 2 weeks later, I met Daniel in person. He was older, professional, the kind who valued precision over charm. We were reviewing blueprints for a new office complex when he mentioned something offhand. My wife keeps asking me to hire her friend for the interior design, he said, chuckling. Anna something? My assistant said she was persistent. Oh, Anna. I smiled. Anna Carter? His brow furrowed. Yes, that's the one. You know her? She's my sister-in-law, I said, tone even. Well, small world, he said. Persistent woman? But I don't mix business with whatever that is. He changed the subject, but my mind was already spinning. So she wasn't working for him. She was pretending to. Lying to the family. Another thread in her perfect tapestry, and now I had someone credible. Someone who could unknowingly verify the truth. I wrote his words down that night, every detail. Not for gossip. For strategy. Revenge is an architecture of timing. You can't build too fast. You have to let the concrete set. So I waited. While I waited, I watched her undo herself, piece by piece. She bragged more. Posted more. Told more stories that contradicted each other. One night I even overheard her at Mom's, talking loudly about a new business deal she was closing. I knew that tone. The same one she'd used when she'd said, "We used your card for the flights. All performance. All smoke." I stayed quiet, sipping my tea. But inside, I was already redrawing the final lines of my blueprint. The first real move came unexpectedly. My boss, a pragmatic man named Roland, called me into his office. He said, "Lena, the Crossfield project's going to need a design consultant. Someone with presentation flair. Do you know anyone suitable?" I smiled. "Yes," I said. "Actually, I do." "Great. Who?" I gave him a name, not Anna's. A friend of mine, Maya, who'd been struggling to land her big break. Talented, loyal, and, most importantly, trustworthy. Within a week, Maya was in meetings with Crossfield. Within 2, her design sketches were chosen. Anna had no idea, of course. She'd been telling everyone she was in talks with Daniel Cross. When the deal was officially announced, and Maya was credited publicly, I waited for her to call me. She didn't disappoint. The phone rang that night. Her voice was low, sharp around the edges. "You had something to do with this, didn't you?" "With what?" I asked. "That Crossfield project." "Maya got the contract." "You knew I was trying for that." "You mean the project you said you already had?" Her silence crackled through the phone. "You're playing a dangerous game, Lena." I smiled into the receiver. "Then you should have read the rules before you started it." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time after. Not triumphant, not yet, but steady. For the first time, she was the one unsettled. Days later, Evan showed up at my apartment. He looked tired, eyes sunken, shoulders heavy. "Lena," he said quietly, "what's going on between you and Anna?" "She's been different." "Different how?" "She's irritable, defensive. Keeps saying you're trying to ruin her." I wanted to tell him everything. The charges, the lies, the manipulation, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Do you believe her?" He hesitated. Then, "I don't know." That hurt more than I expected. I wanted to shout that I was his sister, not the enemy. But shouting doesn't change blind loyalty, so instead, I said calmly, "Then maybe you should start paying attention. Evan, Because she's not who you think she is. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded faintly, like he wanted to believe me but couldn't yet. That was okay. He would. In time. A week later, I got an unexpected visitor at work. Maya. She rushed into my office, eyes wide. "You'll never guess who just tried to reach out to me," she said out of breath. I already knew. "Anna," I said. She blinked. "How did you—" She probably offered to collaborate, right? Maybe ask for a coffee meeting? Maya nodded slowly. Exactly that. How did you know? Because that's what she does. She attaches herself to success she didn't earn. Maya frowned. She seemed angry. Good, I said softly. Let her be. Maya didn't press. She trusted me. And that was enough. But that night as I lay in bed, I couldn't help thinking, this was only the first crack. There would be more. The final straw came during Mom's birthday dinner a month later. Anna, of course, had planned the whole thing. She'd rented a private dining room at an upscale restaurant, conveniently paid for, I suspected, with someone else's money. I arrived late, intentionally. When I walked in, she was in her element, glowing under candlelight, laughing loudly, pouring wine like she owned the world. "Lena," she exclaimed. "Finally. We were just talking about you," I smiled. "Oh? All good things, I hope. Always," she said sweetly. I took my seat across from her. Evan looked tense. Mom, oblivious, was chatting happily. Dinner passed quietly, until dessert. That's when Anna pulled out her phone and said, "Oh, everyone look." She showed a photo, her and Evan on the beach. Caption, "Paradise with my love. Worth every penny, everyone awed except me, because I recognized the resort. The Tropicana, the one from my bank statement months ago. The same trip she'd said she'd booked accidentally on my card. And that's when I realized she'd posted it on purpose, a reminder, a taunt. Her way of saying, I can still take from you, and you'll still watch. I looked at her across the table. She smiled. And for the first time I smiled back, because she didn't know what I was holding. Blueprint A receipts, screenshots, proof. And now, witnesses. Her empire wasn't built on strength. It was built on borrowed credit and borrowed lies, and soon I'd make sure everyone saw it. Revenge isn't a single act. It's a process. You don't just strike back. You dismantle, quietly, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to rebuild. Anna had used my name, my money, my trust. But I'd use something stronger. Truth, and truth, when revealed at the right moment, is the sharpest weapon of all. You can't rush a collapse. It has to happen naturally, slow enough that the guilty still believe they're safe, right until the moment the floor gives way. That's what I was waiting for. The moment Anna stopped watching her step, and it came sooner than I thought. A few weeks after Mom's birthday dinner, Evan called me. His voice sounded strained, almost hoarse. "Lena, can we talk?" I hesitated. "Of course. What's wrong?" "It's Anna. Something's going on." Those words hit differently. For months, I'd been the one noticing the cracks. Now, he finally saw one. We met at a small cafe near my office, neutral ground. When I arrived, he was already there, fingers tapping against his cup like he was trying to shake off nerves. He didn't look like my brother anymore. He looked like a man trying to hold two worlds together. He started talking before I sat down. "She's been acting strange," he said. "Secretive, snapping at me for no reason. Have you asked her why?" "Yeah, and she says it's work stress." "But she doesn't have work, Lena. She hasn't had a single design client in months." I stayed quiet. "She told Mom she was redecorating the Cross estate," he added. "Said she was traveling for meetings. There it was. Another lie. What did you tell her? I asked. I didn't. I wanted to hear it from you first. Is it true? You're working with Daniel Cross, right? Yes, I said slowly. And no, Anna was never involved. He didn't even know who she was. He exhaled sharply, pressing his palms to his face. I knew it. God, Lena, I knew something wasn't right. I let him sit with it. That weight of realization that comes when denial finally cracks. When he looked up again, there was something raw in his eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you wouldn't have believed me. He didn't argue. Because we both knew it was true. That conversation changed everything. For the first time, I wasn't alone in knowing. Evan started noticing things. Missing money, late bills, small lies that didn't add up. He didn't confront her yet, but he began to see, and I could feel it, the shift. Anna was losing control. A few days later, I received an unexpected email from an unknown address. Subject: You should stop, no message. No signature. Just that line. At first I thought it was spam. Then I noticed the sender's domain. A private one, connected to Anna's so-called design site. So she knew. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to sense the danger. It didn't scare me. It confirmed I was close. I printed the email. Filed it under a new folder. Blueprint B. If blueprint-aware evidence, Blueprint B would be exposure. At work, I focused harder than ever. If I was going to face the storm, I needed stability in every other corner of my life. But even there, Anna's shadow lingered. She'd started calling my boss. At first, it was friendly, asking about projects, pretending to be interested. Then, the questions that felt sharper. Has Lena been showing up on time? Is she managing her workload okay? Roland mentioned it casually one afternoon, laughing. Your sister-in-law is quite the watchdog, he said. I smiled tightly. She likes to keep track of people. Inside, though, I felt the anger rise. Quiet, slow, deliberate. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was an invasion. She wanted to undermine my reputation, make me look unstable. Exactly what narcissists do when they sense their mirror cracking. She wanted to discredit me before I could expose her, and that's when I decided the time for patience was ending. That night I called Evan. Can you come over? I asked. It's important. He arrived looking exhausted, worn down by confusion, loyalty, guilt. I poured him a drink, then slid a folder across the table. Inside, printed statements, screenshots, receipts, and even copies of her social posts matched to the transactions. He flipped through them slowly. Didn't speak for a long time. When he did, his voice cracked. Oh my God, I said nothing. He kept turning pages, eyes darkening with each one. Then he reached the email, the one that said, you should stop. He looked up. She sent this to you? Yes, he swallowed. Why? Because she's afraid. He sank back in his chair, staring at nothing. After a long silence, he said quietly, I think I need to see what she says when I show her this. I reached across the table, touching his hand. Evan, be careful. She doesn't lose gracefully. He nodded. But there was a hardness in his expression I hadn't seen before. The confrontation happened 2 nights later. He told me later how it unfolded, his voice shaking, eyes distant. He waited until after dinner. Waited until she'd poured her wine and started one of her perfect monologues. Then he placed the folder on the table. She's been keeping track, he said quietly. Anna looked at it, then at him. What is this? Evidence, he said. Of what you've done, she laughed. Oh, come on, Evan. Are we really doing this? Did you use her card? Silence. Then, That's ridiculous. He opened a page, showing the receipts and screenshots. Her smile faltered for the first time. I can explain, she said, but there's no explaining when the truth is printed in black and white. She stood, pacing. Lena's manipulating you, she said sharply. She's jealous. She always has been. He didn't respond, didn't yell, didn't argue. He just said quietly, "You need to leave." That's when she lost it. She shouted, cursed, said things I don't think she'd ever meant to say aloud. All the poison that had been carefully hidden behind her smile came spilling out, and Evan saw it. All of it. That night, he came to my apartment again. His hands were trembling. She's gone, he said. Packed a bag and left. I nodded slowly. And you? He exhaled. I don't know. I feel relieved and ashamed. I didn't want to believe any of it, but you were right. I never wanted to be right, I said. We sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that feels heavy but necessary. When he left, he hugged me, the way he used to. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had my brother back, but I knew Anna. And I knew she wouldn't disappear quietly. People like her need attention. They can't stand silence. Sure enough, within a week she started posting again. Cryptic quotes, vague captions. Some people can't handle strong women. Truth always wins in the end. And the comments, subtle digs, sympathy from her friends who didn't know the story. It was her way of rewriting the narrative again. But this time, I didn't respond. Didn't explain. I didn't have to. Because the people who mattered, the ones who had seen behind the curtain, finally knew the truth. And she was left performing for an audience that no longer believed her. It's strange how revenge doesn't feel like fireworks. It's quieter, almost peaceful. You don't feel triumphant. You feel free. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over yet. Anna had vanished from our lives, yes. But she wasn't done. There was still one piece left. The piece that would bring the story full circle. And when it came, it would be public. Because some lessons, I realized, have to be taught in the open, and hers was coming soon. Silence can be the loudest form of punishment. When you stop responding, stop reacting, people like Anna panic. Because their power depends on your attention. For weeks after she left, that's all I gave her. Nothing. Evan changed the locks, closed their joint accounts, and started therapy. His idea, not mine. I was proud of him. But I also knew he wasn't ready for how far she'd go to stay relevant, because Anna wasn't done. She was just regrouping. The first sign came one morning at work. I was mid-presentation when my phone buzzed, notifications flooding in. When the meeting ended, I checked my name. All over a forum I didn't recognize. Beware this woman. She ruins families. Toxic architect manipulates her brother's marriage. My photos, my face, my name. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't rage this time. It was a cold, sick clarity. Only one person would go that far. Anna. That night, I found her new social media accounts. She'd rebranded herself, Anna Bloom, lifestyle consultant. The captions were full of spiritual quotes about forgiveness and healing. The irony could have burned the air, but the comments were worse. People believed her. Strangers call her brave. Sympathetic women praised her for leaving a toxic family. It was genius in a way. She'd always been good at twisting truth into performance, but she'd made a mistake. This time, her lies were public. And public lies leave footprints. I printed every post, every fake accusation, every photo she'd used of me. Each one went into Blueprint CA new file, not for evidence of theft, but for defamation. I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I was going to do it cleanly, professionally, so I called my lawyer. Defamation case? She asked, flipping through the documents I brought. You have plenty of proof. This could get messy, though. I don't care if it's messy, I said. I care that it's public. Her smile was small but knowing. Then we'll do it right. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and statements. I didn't tell Evan right away. Not until the official filing was ready. He'd been trying to move forward. But the guilt lingered in his eyes whenever we talked. When I finally told him, he froze. Lena, are you sure? Yes. She'll retaliate. I'm counting on it. Because people like Anna don't know when to stop digging. The more they claw, the deeper they bury themselves, and she didn't disappoint. A week after she was served, she posted a video, tears in her eyes, voice trembling. This is what happens when you tell the truth, she said. They try to destroy you. I watched it twice. Once to understand, once to feel nothing, because I didn't. Not anymore. Her face didn't even look familiar now. Just another stranger performing pain for likes. The comments poured in. Sympathy, outrage, validation. She was good. I'll give her that. But lies don't hold forever, especially when the cracks are already showing. A journalist reached out soon after. Said she'd seen the lawsuit filing. Asked if I'd be willing to comment. I hesitated. Then said yes. We met in a quiet cafe. The same one where Evan and I had once sat. I didn't trash Anna, didn't defend myself either. I just told the truth. How I'd discovered the charges. How I'd stayed silent to protect my family. How silence turned into permission for cruelty. The journalist listened carefully, then asked, "What do you want people to know about her?" That the smile isn't always kindness. Sometimes it's camouflage. The article came out a week later. Balanced, respectful. No drama, just facts. Architect files suit against former sister-in-law over financial fraud and online harassment. No embellishments. No theatrics. Just truth. It spread fast. And when truth spreads, lies collapse quietly under their own weight. Anna posted once more after that. Something about choosing peace and stepping back from social media. Then her accounts vanished. No more quotes. No more videos. No more performance. But victory didn't feel like I thought it would. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty because revenge isn't a celebration. It's a release. It gives you back what was taken, but it doesn't give you more. And that night, sitting alone on my balcony, I realized something else. I'd been so focused on tearing down her lies that I'd forgotten to rebuild myself. The part of me that used to draw just for joy. The part that believed family meant safety. The part that trusted easily. Those were gone. And no court case could return them. A few days later, Evan visited. He looked lighter, his eyes clearer, his shoulders less tense. I heard about the article, he said. You did it. I did, I replied softly. He sat beside me, staring out at the city lights. I'm sorry, Lena. That's all he said. But it was enough. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that isn't heavy anymore. Just real. He finally added, she called me. After the article, said she wanted to apologize. I turned to him. Did she? He nodded slowly. Not really. She just wanted to see if I'd still defend her. I didn't, I smiled faintly. That's progress, he chuckled weakly. She said something weird, though. Said you'd won the game. Game? Yeah, like this was all some competition. I looked out at the skyline again. It was never a game. She just never learned the rules. Weeks passed. The case closed quietly. Settlement reached. Confidential, but in my favor. She was gone from our lives, geographically, digitally, emotionally. And I started breathing again. At work, my projects flourished. Maya got promoted. Even my mother, once skeptical, began to see the truth for what it was. Sometimes, she said softly over dinner one night, I think people like Anna come into our lives to teach us who we are not. I nodded. But I didn't tell her the rest, that some people come to teach you what you're capable of when pushed too far. One evening, I opened the old folder, Blueprint A, pages of receipts, screenshots, and notes. It all felt like another lifetime. I could have thrown it away. But I didn't. Instead, I slid it into a drawer and locked it. Not out of vengeance. Out of remembrance. Because the truth isn't something you erase. It's something you carry. Not as a wound, but as armor. And maybe someday I'd need it again. Not for Anna, but to remind myself of what happens when you let someone cross every boundary and smile while doing it. People think revenge stories end with power. They don't. They end with peace. The quiet kind. The kind you earn after walking through fire and refusing to burn. Anna wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to define me by her betrayal. But in the end, she gave me something she never had. Self-respect, clarity, freedom. And those things? You can't steal them. Not even with someone else's credit card. You think you've won when silence finally arrives. When the phone stops buzzing, the drama fades, and people stop whispering your name. But silence has a way of testing you. It asks, are you really free? Or just resting before the next fight? I didn't know the answer yet. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The air lost its tension little by little. Evan started living again. He spent weekends hiking, rediscovering the things he used to love before Anna's world swallowed him whole. Mom stopped defending misunderstandings. Even the house felt lighter. And me? I found peace in the simplest things. A sunrise over my balcony. A quiet night sketching with no deadlines, no noise. But peace, I learned, can be fragile. It only takes one sound to shatter it. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary in every way, until it wasn't. I came home late from work, dropped my bag, and noticed the red light blinking on my answering machine. Nobody leaves voicemails anymore. I pressed play, a click. Then a pause. Then her voice. Lena? It's Anna. My blood went cold. She sounded calm. Too calm. I'm not calling to fight, she said. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I froze. The message continued. I've been getting help. Therapy. I realized what I did was wrong. I hurt people who didn't deserve it. I just hope one day you can forgive me. Silence. Then a faint exhale before the line cut off. Forgive. The word sat there, heavy and uninvited. That night, I barely slept. Her voice kept echoing in my head, soft, almost humble. But humility doesn't erase patterns. And Anna's patterns always came with intent. Still, part of me wanted to believe her. Because forgiveness, even the thought of it, felt like putting down a weight I'd been carrying for too long. But another part, the part that remembered every manipulation, every lie, whispered caution. So I waited. A few days later, I met with Maya for coffee. You look tense, she said. Everything okay? Got a voicemail, I said. From who? Anna. Her eyebrows shot up. You're kidding. I wish. What did she say? I told her. Maya stirred her drink, thinking. You think she means it? I don't know. With her, I never know. Well, she said finally, forgiveness doesn't mean you have to open the door again. Sometimes you forgive people by leaving them outside. I smiled faintly. Outside is exactly where she belongs. Still, curiosity is dangerous. It creeps in through the cracks of peace. A week later, I searched her name online. Not out of obsession, just curiosity. What I found made my stomach twist. She'd moved to another city. New job, new friends, new image. Her posts were clean, wholesome, even. Charity work, motivational quotes, smiling with colleagues. A total reinvention. And in the comments, someone wrote, "So proud of you, Anna. You've come so far." She replied, "Thank you. I learned that growth comes when you face your demons and forgive those who hurt you. Forgive those who hurt you." There it was again. The rewrite. I wasn't the villain she was apologizing to. I was the villain in her new story. The subtle implication that she was the victim all along. And I realized she wasn't seeking forgiveness. She was reclaiming the narrative. A part of me laughed. A sad, almost exhausted kind of laugh. She'd lost the game, yes, but she couldn't stand not controlling the ending. And so she wrote a new one. For herself. For the people who'd never know the truth, I could have exposed her again. Could have shown everyone the proof, but I didn't. Because I finally understood something. You can't keep fighting people who live for conflict. It's like arguing with an echo. It only gets louder when you respond. Instead, I went for a drive that evening. No destination. Just the road, the hum of the engine, and my thoughts. The sunset painted the sky in fire, orange bleeding into gold. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry, or tense, or defensive. I just felt done. I pulled over near the lake, rolled down the window, let the wind touch my face. And in that moment, I whispered, not to her, but to myself, "I forgive you." Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. A few months later, I got a letter, handwritten, the return address, Anna Bloom. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, that old relentless friend, won again. Inside, a single sheet. "Dear Lena, I won't bother you again. I just wanted to thank you. You may not believe it, but you were right. About everything. I'm trying to be better now. You were my mirror, even when I hated what I saw. Take care of yourself. Anna." No lies, no guilt trips. Just words that, for once, felt real. I read it twice. Then folded it back and tucked it in a drawer, next to Blueprint A, not as evidence. As closure. Some ghosts don't haunt because they want to hurt you. They haunt because they want to be remembered. Anna would always be a part of my story. Not the villain. Not anymore. Just the lesson. The one who taught me boundaries, strength, and the cost of silence. That weekend, I visited the lake again. The same spot where I'd once whispered forgiveness to the wind. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. And for the first time, I saw my reflection, steady, unshaken. I wasn't the woman who'd flinched at dinner when someone said, "We used your card for the flights. Hope that's fine." I wasn't the sister who stayed quiet to keep the peace. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the architect. Of truth, of boundaries, of my own peace. And maybe that's the only revenge that ever matters. Peace doesn't end with a scream. Sometimes it ends with a whisper. Life had finally found its rhythm again. Work was steady. Evan was happy, really happy. He'd started seeing someone new. Quiet, kind, nothing like Anna and me. I'd started sketching again. Not for clients. For myself. For the first time in years, the world didn't feel like a battlefield. Then one morning, an envelope arrived. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. I almost threw it out. But something about it, the weight, the stillness, made me pause. Inside was a check. Large, far more than the settlement amount from months ago, and a note. For what I took, I found the courage to admit it. The rest is for you to build something new. Hot, no drama, no lies. Just restitution, simple, silent. I stared at the check for a long time. Not because I needed the money, but because it felt like the last piece of her shadow being lifted. Maybe she was still trying to rewrite the story. Maybe this was her way of buying peace, but for once, I didn't care why. I folded the note, placed it in my journal, and whispered, "Finally." A few days later, Evan called. "She sent you something too?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yeah," he sighed. "She reached out to me as well. Said she's moving overseas. Starting over." "Good for her," I said. He was quiet a moment. Then, "You think people like her ever really change?" I thought about it. About the smile, the lies, the apology, the letter, and finally said, "I think some people don't change. They just stop pretending." He nodded, and I could hear the relief in his breath. That night I took the check to the bank, but instead of depositing it, I asked the teller to break it into small bills. Then I walked down the street, to the small women's shelter I passed every morning on my way to work. I slipped the envelope into their donation box and walked away. It wasn't charity. It was released. The money she'd taken, her last hold over me, was finally gone, and for the first time, so was she. Revenge doesn't always end in ruin. Sometimes it ends in redemption. Not theirs, but yours. I didn't need her downfall anymore. I'd already built something stronger, my peace, my boundaries, myself. After the storm, there's an odd kind of quiet. Not empty, just unfamiliar. For so long, my world had revolved around defense, proof, retaliation, survival. Now, there was nothing left to fight. I poured myself into my work again, but it wasn't the same. It felt lighter. I wasn't designing for approval anymore. I was creating for joy. One afternoon, Roland stopped by my desk. He looked at a sketch I'd been working on. A small coastal house, open and bright. "New project?" he asked. I smiled. "Just something for me." He nodded. "Looks peaceful." It was. Because for the first time, the design wasn't about structure or balance. It was about space, the kind that lets you breathe. I still think about her sometimes. Not with anger, with distance, like looking at an old photograph of someone you used to know, because that's all she is now. A lesson pressed between the pages of my story. When I lock my door at night, I feel safe. Not because I've shut the world out, but because I finally let myself in. And that, I think, is the real revenge. Peace doesn't erase the past. It just changes how it echoes. A few months later, I got a call from Evan. He sounded calm, almost hesitant. "Lena, did you hear?" "Hear what?" "Anna's in the news." My heart skipped, but not from fear, from memory. "What happened?" "She got arrested. Fraud charges. Different city, new company." Of course, it wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was recognition. Patterns don't vanish just because we stop watching them. I thanked him, hung up, and sat for a while, staring at the faint reflection of my face in the window. The woman looking back at me didn't smile. She didn't frown either, she just understood. Anna had built her life on illusion, and illusions always collapse sooner or later. But this time I wasn't part of it. This time I wasn't her collateral damage. That night I took a walk by the lake again. The same one that had listened to all my anger, my grief, my forgiveness. The wind was cool, the water still. I whispered, "May she finally face herself." And the ripples carried it away. I used to think revenge was about balance, about restoring what someone else took. But standing here now, I realize it's not about balance at all. It's about release. The world moved on without Anna, and I did too. I started teaching part-time. Architecture students, bright and curious, asking questions that reminded me of who I used to be before everything hardened. One of them asked me once, "Ms. Carter, what's the most important part of any design?" I smiled. "The foundation," I said. "It has to hold, even when everything else falls apart." They didn't know I wasn't just talking about buildings. Evan visited more often now. Sometimes we didn't even talk about the past. We just shared quiet dinners, laughter that didn't feel forced. And every time he left, I felt gratitude. Not for the revenge, for the healing that came after. At night, I sometimes caught myself tracing the skyline with my eyes. Each building, each window, glowing softly, each one is a reminder that people can rebuild. Even after the collapse, because revenge might level the old walls. But peace is what teaches you how to build again. Sometimes closure isn't a moment, it's a place. I hadn't been back to my brother's old house since that night. The dinner where it all began. One afternoon, Evan asked me to come by. He was finally selling it. A fresh start. When I stepped inside, the air felt different. Still familiar but hollow, like the echoes had finally faded. We walked through each room slowly. The dining room last. The table was still there. The same one where she'd smiled and said, "We used your card for the flights. Hope that's fine." I ran my hand over the wood, tracing the faint scratches where her ring had tapped against the surface. For a moment, I saw it all again, the laughter, the confusion, the betrayal. But it didn't hurt anymore. It just was. Evan stood beside me quietly. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, more than okay," he smiled. "It's strange, isn't it? How something can start with so much pain and end with peace." I looked at him. Maybe peace is just what's left after everything fake burns away. He nodded slowly, understanding. As we left, I took one last look back. At the table, the walls, the ghosts. And then I closed the door, for good. It's strange how peace doesn't make noise. It doesn't arrive with celebration, just quiet. These days I wake up before sunrise. Make coffee. Watch the light fill my apartment. No lies, no guilt. Just stillness. I still think of that night sometimes. Her smile, that single sentence that changed everything. But now, it doesn't sting. It just reminds me how far I've come. Because revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about finding myself again. Piece by piece. And I did. Have you ever trusted someone who used your kindness against you? Did you fight back or walk away? Sometimes the hardest revenge isn't what you do to them. It's what you don't let them do to you anymore. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever rebuilt yourself after betrayal, hit like, share it with someone who needs strength tonight, and tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Anna? Or would you have made her pay? Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud, it's peaceful,